So let's look first at the operating guidance. Now, the operating guidance from page 50 onwards has a list of hazard profiles. So it's a series of hazard profiles. There's one for every one of the 29 hazards. And they tell you a bit about each of the hazards. And they've got some very useful information on which helps you to work out, first of all, what the data is based on, what sort of health effects you get from that hazard, which may not be immediately obvious to you. The sort of causes, preventative measures in the ideal, and then each one of them has a list of relevant matters affecting the likelihood and the harm outcome. So once you've finished your inspection, you've listed all your deficiencies, then you can go through these relevant matters affecting the likelihood and the harm outcome, and you can decide which one of these are which one of them are going to be relevant to this hazard. Now, this is an inter alia list. It's amongst other things, so you don't have to just go on this list, but it is reasonably thorough for each of the hazards. So, for instance, for excess cold, thermal insulation, dampness, because if you've got a damp property, it's first of all harder to heat, and second, the damp itself can fill up all little air pockets you get in the fabric of the building, making it less insulating. Settling of insulation, making it less efficient, the type of heating provision, the size of the heating system, is it big enough for the size of the room or property, and the amount of heat loss you're going to get from that structure. The installation maintenance of the heating system, the controls of the heating system, and then there's some for ventilation. So the amount of ventilation, ventilation controls, disrepair to ventilation, and drafts. So that's considering things such as if you've got an older property with open chimneys and drafty windows and drafty doors, then you're going to need more heating provision in order to offset the heat loss caused by those drafts. And you need a warmer indoor living temperature for the same level of thermal comfort if you've got air movement within a room. So if you've got still air, you don't need to warm it up as much for the same level of thermal comfort. So if we're considering this, that gives us a starting point of what sort of things to look at. And then each one of the hazard profiles has this really useful little table which says that for certain types of property, this is what the average scores are for the property. So it says whether they're HMOs or non-HMOs. Now, an HMO is a house in multiple occupation, a property which is occupied by 3 or more unrelated people who are sharing amenities and paying some form of rent. When I say amenities, I mean bathrooms, WCs, and kitchens. So if you have people who are not living as a family, then you can say that they're in an HMO. So if our property, let's say we've got a Victorian terrace property, then it's not occupied by unrelated people, so it's occupied by family. Then we can say it's a non-HMO. It's a pre-1920 property because it's from the Victorian period. So we can say that for that property, the average scores are going to be for likelihood 1 in 330. And then it gives us a range of scores for health outcomes too. We won't worry too much about those now because we'll be dealing with those in a minute, in the next section. So it says, so all you have to do is you have to imagine in your mind's eye what an average property looks like. So in this case, if we're considering the average for a Victorian period property, you've got to imagine what a Victorian period property would look like now with any changes that had been made to it in the period since the Victorian times. So an average Victorian period property now will probably have double glazing. It's probably going to have some kind of loft insulation. It's unlikely to have external wall cladding, and it's probably going to have gas central heating. So that gives you an idea for excess cold what an average property is likely to look like.